Hi, and welcome to the summary of the ACT prep session that was held on Friday, January 30th. This covered the ACT math test and the WorkKeys applied mathematics test. So welcome to this summary. If you couldn't attend the session, I think spending some time to view this and then taking advantage of the practice tests and the tutorial, I think will be a great preparation for success on March 3rd when you take the actual ACT and March 4th when you take the WorkKeys applied math assessment. So first of all, what we did is we talked about a little bit of news, and I'll share that. A little bit of it might be outdated as I record this, but we'll see. We'll go over the WorkKeys, ACT, and the MME in general. We'll take you to the College Prep Center, and we'll do that fairly quickly, but we're going to use that to show you where the ACT prep materials are. Some of you that have been attending the sessions are pretty familiar with that by now. And we'll talk about the ACT math test, what's on it, an overview of the test, how many items, how much time, tips and strategies for tackling the problems, and so on. And then at that point, once we're done, obviously on your own, you can complete a pretest or any of the unit practice tests, or there's 4 full math ACT practice tests available on the College Preparation Center website for the Michigan Electronic Library. So in terms of news on the 30th, what we talked about, and it still applies, that the winter semester is well underway now. It's time to work hard and possibly adapt if necessary. Our 11th grade students, which most of you viewing this session would be, are just into your second semester of classes at SC4, and I'm sure the teachers you have in these 2 classes are probably different than the ones you had in the fall semester. And you have to be able to adapt. Some teachers, the expectations are a whole lot different. In some cases, you'll like the new expectations, and other times you're going to have to work a lot harder and just basically adapt to the instructors. But it's time to get to work and do well, and you can. Remember, there's all kinds of support available if you need it. So just reach out and ask for the support and spend some time working hard in your classes. The enrollment process for next year is underway, and the reason I ask you is because as 11th graders, you guys very well may have friends or family members who are currently in 10th grade, and you might be able to share some information about the middle college and maybe recommend that they enroll, or possibly it's not the right thing for them. So that's up to you and your family, but now is the time. We're talking to sophomore students only, those who are in 10th grade. So if you have someone you know, a neighbor, friend, relative, let them know that they need to get the application in very soon if they haven't. We held an open house. It was actually just a couple days ago, last Saturday. I'm recording this on February 9th. Where we had families and students come in to ask questions and learn more about the middle college. We can do the same thing. If you have someone who is not familiar with the middle college and wants to learn more about it, they can simply give me a call or go to our website, and you can direct them there, and then they can learn more information about it. One thing about that, I'm going to go back, is the applications are due. The very last time we can take an application is March 31st. Now that seems a long way away, but it'll be here before you know it. And we'd like applications in this week, the week of February 9th through the 13th. But if for some reason they don't get it in, it would be okay if they sent the application in as late as March 31st. Okay, so that's it for the news. Now moving on for the WorkKeys assessment, and I have that very short web address, the URL up there, so you might want to take a second and jot that down, act.org/WorkKeys. The WorkKeys assessments, the tests are actually produced or made by the ACT organization. There's some similarities, but they actually are a bit different. I actually think they're kind of neat tests. You're going to be faced with some hard items, but you'll also have some that you'll be able to get without too much difficulty as well. So I'm going to read you a little information taken from the site about the WorkKeys tests. And it says the applied mathematics test, in particular, is one of 3 WorkKeys assessments used with the National Career Readiness Certificate Program. This assessment measures the skill people use when they apply mathematical reasoning, critical thinking and problem-solving techniques to work-related problems. And that's the key, that the problems on the applied math and all the WorkKeys assessments are tied to real-world, usually work-related problems. Sometimes there might be something in a personal life, your home life, but usually it's related to some kind of job, some kind of task you would be asked to do in a job. So that, again, I think makes the problems a little more interesting, to me anyway. The test questions require the examinee to set up and solve the types of problems and do the types of calculations that actually occur in the workplace. The test is designed to be taken with a calculator. A formula sheet that includes all formulas required for the assessment is provided, so you don't have to memorize the Pythagorean theorem or anything like that. There'll be a formula sheet with all kinds of formulas on it. Of course, you're going to have to know which one applies to a particular question, but you can use a calculator. It says, while individuals may use calculators and conversion tables to help with the problems, they still need to use math skills to think them through. So it makes sense. You're not just going to be able to punch things into the calculator. All right, the test questions on the WorkKeys assessments, when students receive ultimately a score, it's going to be a level between 3 and either 6 or 7. There's different levels of questions. And just to give you an example, if you go to the WorkKeys site, that website that I had up there at the beginning, you can link to a list of many, many jobs, hundreds of jobs, and the types of score levels in each of the 3 tests that you'll take, what people in those jobs usually need to get to. And for example, accountants need to get to a level 6 in the applied mathematics test, and it goes up to level 7 questions. But it kind of makes sense that accountants are working with numbers and formulas and often working with taxes and just a lot of things that require the use of numbers and math. And so it's not that you absolutely have to score a 6 on this or you can't be an accountant, but just that's a good score to hit, and sometimes the most accountants will operate at that level. On the other hand, whoops, I'm going to go back here, sorry. On the other hand, you can see a 3 level, which is a really basic level of math for a job such as an advertising sales agent, where someone might be out trying to sell ads for a newspaper or a radio station. I would tend to think that number should be a little bit higher because they're crunching numbers as well, but at least from the statistics of the ACT folks, they don't need nearly the level of math as an accountant or something else there. But you can see the different scores needed for the different tests, and we'll talk more about these other tests, the locating information, in the next session. We did that on Friday, February 6th, and I'll have a summary video of that as well. So there's 3 different WorkKeys tests that you'll take. So let's look at quickly now. We're going to go through some of the sample items at each level so you can get a feel for what you're going to be asked to do. This is the lowest level item. It's a level 3, and it states, in your job as a cashier, a customer gives you a $20 bill to pay for a can of coffee that costs $3.84. How much change should you give back? And so that one, again, we're not going to take time in this video to go through all these, but it's a basic subtraction problem, and you can use a calculator if you need to, and you should come up with the answer of $16.16 to get the right answer. So you can see the third one down, 1626, is pretty close. So that a simple calculation here could give you that answer. But basically, if you can use a calculator, you should be able to get that one correct. Here's a level 4 item. It says, over the last 5 days, you made the following numbers of sales calls, and it lists 8, 7, 9, 5, and 7. On the average, how many calls did you make each day? So now you have to know how to get the average of a series of numbers, in this case 5 numbers. And the correct answer, if you do the math correctly, and again with the answer it'll tell you how they do it, is the third one down, 7.2. Okay, so you might be able just to estimate that by looking at the numbers if you're pretty familiar with averages and so on, but a lot of students will need to actually, add them up and divide by 5 and to get the exact answer there. And again, 7.0 is pretty close to 7.2, so that's one it's close. Could be a choice you might choose. So make sure you get your calculations correct, even if the problem seems easy at first. Now, number 5 level item, remember it goes up to number 7. Number one, you can see a lot more text involved, and not that they all have that, but just in general, that would lead you to believe this is a little higher level problem. And I'll just kind of quickly read through this, but again, we're not going to spend a lot of time on these. But there's a quick call, which is a company, charges 18 cents per minute for long distance calls. Econophone totals your phone usage each month and rounds the number of minutes up to the nearest 15 minutes. It then charges $7.90 per hour of phone usage, dividing this charge into 15-minute segments if you use less than a full hour. If your office makes 5 hours and 3 minutes worth of calls this month using the company with the lower price, how much will these calls cost? Okay, so there's a lot going on there. So you're going to want to write some things down. You can write in the test booklet. You'll have some scratch paper, I think, but if not, at least the test booklet. And you might write the two companies down and then go ahead and try to figure out what the cost is going to be with each of those companies. Choose the lower cost, and that'll be your answer. And so if we look at that, there's a lot going on that it doesn't show you, but 4148 would be the correct response for a number 5 level item there. And just really quickly, level 6 item, in this case you're determining how many boxes of tiles you need to complete a job. So you're going to do things related to the area of a room and the size of the tile and so on. So you need the area formula, things like that. So again, not going to spend a lot of time on that. You can find these examples on the act.org/WorkKeys website. And finally, a level 7 question. Doesn't look too different than the level 6, but it says the farm where you just started working has a vertical cylindrical oil tank that is 2.5 feet across on the inside. The depth of the oil in the tank is 2 feet. If 1 cubic foot of space holds 7.48 gallons, about how many gallons of oil are left in the tank? So again, it's not a lot of text there, but there's a lot of numbers and information, and you would need to know the formula or how to find the formula of a cylinder. Again, you're going to get a formula sheet, but you're going to have to know when the proper time to use that formula might be. But this is a very high level math, and you're not going to get all level 7, so don't panic. Just do the best you can on those. So just finishing up on the part on the WorkKeys assessment, if you want a few more samples of WorkKeys questions in the other areas, in the locating information or the reading information sections, you can go to act.org/WorkKeys. And from there, you can also purchase a complete practice test just for $5. So that's not that much if you want to run through one of the tests so you feel more comfortable going into the real test on March 4th, which is Wednesday. Okay, so now the ACT MME, we're not going to do an overview during this video presentation. We're going to jump right to the math test, but I do want to just show you one thing at this point before we go into the math test. If you have not gone to any of the sessions, or if you've not viewed any of the videos, this is the first one you're viewing. On this site, this is the Blue Water Middle College, we call it Student Success Central site, and I've sent the link out to this in a recent email and will again. There's information for the different grades, and in particular the 11th grade page, there's a page called ACT MME Prep. So I'm going to click on that, and what you'll see when you go here are the summary videos embedded right in this page. And this is the overview of the ACT and why it's important, and an overview of how to get into the College Preparation Center. And then this one focuses on the reading test. So when you click these, I won't do it right now, but it'll open up. I recommend you probably want to expand it full size, especially if you're viewing it on your iPad, which you can do. It works well. Okay, so that's if you want to get to the how to get into the college preparation site and the Michigan Electronic Library site. And I'll show you briefly in a bit, but for right now we're going to use that site to get information that'll provide an overview of the ACT math test. Again, now we're shifting over to the real ACT math test. There'll be some tips and strategies how to tackle the problems, things to focus on when studying. And then after the video, it's up to you whether you want to start the tutorial and kind of work your way through it for the math test, or take one of the practice ACT math tests and see how you do and see what types of questions are on there and which ones give you the most trouble, and then you can kind of focus your studying. There's still 3 weeks to work on ACT prep, and that's plenty of time to get a lot of practice in, and so you feel more comfortable on test day. The general overview of the ACT math test shows that there are 60 questions, and you'll get 60 minutes to complete those questions. So basically, it's 1 minute per question. Now, some of the questions, obviously, you're going to be able to answer in 10, 15, maybe 20 seconds. Others, it may take 3 minutes to answer. The ones that you can answer more quickly are the ones you want to try to do first, and then that will give you that extra time later on. So that's one of the strategies that you're going to want to be aware of. Skip the ones that are really starting to bog you down. Circle them. Make sure you know that you haven't completed them, but then you can always go back. The other thing that's important that this overview shares is that there are 6 categories of subjects that are on the test. And if you see the middle of the slide right here, it says note that 42 out of the 60 questions are up to the basic coordinate geometry only. So, 14, the biggest number of questions, are pre-algebra questions. And then elementary algebra, which is kind of like Algebra 1, makes up the next 10 questions. And then another 9 questions are questions on what might be Algebra 2 topics. Most of our students have had geometry, and coordinate geometry is the geometry related to points, coordinate planes, slopes of lines, and so on. So if you think about it, really, 2/3 of the questions, you guys have actually had pretty good preparation with those and should be fairly familiar. Now, it doesn't mean you're not going to need to do some review, and you should go through the practice tests, go through the tutorials so you can refresh yourself, I guess, on some of those things that you might have had a couple years ago. There are some questions on plane trigonometry, plane geometry, which gets into triangles and circles and area and things like that. Again, that's an area that you might be pretty familiar with from last year, the year before, but maybe need some review. There are just a few questions on trigonometry. So if you haven't taken trigonometry in high school, don't worry about it. You feel free, you can look at the tutorial. But don't focus all your time trying to learn concepts that are only going to be tested on 4 questions. You can get a great math score on the ACT without getting any of the trig questions correct. Okay, so focus your studying, and I'll show you how to get the information on each of these. Finally, the end of the presentation, and we'll go live to the site. You can use a calculator on the ACT math test. They say you don't need one. Some students come in and they don't have a calculator, and there's no extra available because not all schools provide them. They don't have to. So most of the questions can be solved fairly quickly and easily without a calculator. The ACT folks say they can all be solved without a calculator, but if you have one, I would definitely recommend bringing it to test day. Okay, so what we're going to do right now is head to the College Prep Center, the MichiganElectronicLibrary.org site, and we'll go through a little information about the math test. Probably take a few more minutes to do that and then wrap up the video. So exiting out of the presentation, I'm going to go to the internet now, and not here, over here. So again, if you forgot the overview or not sure how to get into this, go back to that Google Sites and do the initial video, watch the initial video, and it'll tell you about how to get into the site. So if you are familiar with this, though, you'll remember we click on the section called Teens. Okay, and then the section called College Bound. All right, and now when we're in the College Bound section, we're going to go to the College Preparation Center. It's the yellow or orange colored key looking shape. I'm going to click on that. Okay, what I'll do now is log in to the site because it allows me access to the tests and things like that. I've already created a login name and account. You'll need to do that if you haven't, but that's described in that earlier video, or you might just be able to figure it out on your own. I'm putting in an email address that I used to sign in. Let's see if I can remember the password I used. And it looks like it's going to let me in. So now I'm logged in. Up you can see at the top as Pete Spencer. Okay, so at this point now I'm going to jump into this site called Prepare for Your ACT Test. Okay. And just as a reminder, to show you, the practice tests and the tutorials are in two different areas. By default, it goes to the tutorial page where I would launch the tutorial, which I'll do in just a minute. But the practice tests are right here. So if you want to take the math practice test, and there are 4 of them, so there's no shortage of practice tests. I clicked on that. It defaults to the English practice test page, but I'm going to click on the math practice test. And you should see that there are the 4 tests, and we could launch any one of those. You can start them, and then if you have to take a break, you can stop them. It'll stop the timer. You can resume them at another time. So there's no reason not to get in and try some of these things. You don't have to say, well, I don't have an hour to devote to it. You can start it, you can do 20 minutes worth, and then pause. Okay? So that's the practice test page. I'm going to go back to the one where it says prepare for your ACT test. Okay, so here we are, and I'm going to launch the tutorial, and it has tutorials for all 4 of the tests and plus the writing as well. So once this opens up, this is the tutorial main page, and you can see the different subject areas, an overview of the ACT English test. Actually, we're going to be I'll be talking about that on February 13th, this Friday coming up. We'll talk a little bit about the writing test, and here's the math one we're going to do right now. Okay, so I'm going to click on this, and it'll open up. Not only does it take me to the first page, but it opens up on the side here these different lessons. And each one of these, there's a plus sign, will open up more different little sub-lessons in terms of whatever the topic might be. I'm going to go to the overview in just a second, but I want to show you while we're here. You can see Lesson 2 is all on the pre-algebra concepts and skills. Lesson 3 is the elementary and intermediate algebra. Lesson 4 are the geometry ideas. Remember, we talked about coordinate and plane geometry, and then Lesson 5 actually has some information on trigonometry. There is a quiz. I believe it's about a 20-question quiz at the end that you can take. It's not a full practice test, but you can take it and then you can check your answers and see what areas you maybe need to go back and practice on. Okay, so I'm going to open up Lesson 1, the test overview. Some of the screens don't have as much information. This is the first one, the math test overview. But I'm going to click on Next. We're not going to go through every one of these, but and here you can see the information about the number of items and the time that you have. That's important because you want to make sure you are not spending too much time on the first 5 questions. You don't want to eat up 20 minutes just with the first 5 questions. Here's the breakdown that we shared in the that I shared in the presentation, and this is the same for every ACT test each year. And if it does change, they would let you know, and then they would change the tutorial. But right now, you can expect 14 pre-algebra questions, 10 elementary algebra, and so on. Okay. And I just want to see that you'll have to read through these on your own. I know it's very hard to read if you're watching a video like this. I basically just want to show you what's there. I clicked on the next one, which is the types of math questions. And those actually are highlighted down here where it says there's some basic problems that require real basic knowledge and calculations, and it says usually only take a few steps to solve. There's application problems, which are similar to the WorkKeys ones we talked about. And then there's analysis problems that require the use of several topics. So you may have to add, several things, addition and some geometry and so on to bring these things, to be able to get the final answer, I guess. It says the questions appear in order of difficulty on the test, but topics are mixed together throughout the test. So that's pretty important. The test the items will probably get harder as you go on, but some topics you might be stronger in than others. So don't give up just because you hit a tough question that's an application question in coordinate geometry. Maybe you're not strong in coordinate geometry. Keep going, because the next question might be that same kind of level, but it's elementary algebra, so it comes more easily to you. Okay, so don't give up. Keep going through the questions. This is the information on calculators, so you can read through that. There are a few calculators that are not approved or allowed on the ACT. Most calculators students have are approved, so most of your calculators would be fine. And this is the page where it says right here, we're into test-taking strategies. This is where there's just a list of some basic strategies that'll help you score better. The math questions start easy and get harder. Okay, we just talked about that. The study wisely one is key. If you're strong in the area of elementary algebra, well, don't spend a lot of time in that. Maybe a quick review and then move on to maybe it's geometry that you need a little more practice. So spend more time studying the area that you need. I'm going to see if I can make this a little bigger for you without still keeping it on the screen. Okay, there's no penalty for wrong answers, so make sure you answer all of them. That's true of all the ACT tests. Don't leave blanks on your answer sheet. Try to eliminate the ones that seem way out there, and then that'll give you better odds if you have to guess. And that's what it says. If you're not sure of an answer, take your best guess. If you skip a question, it says leave that question blank on the answer sheet and return to it when you're done. So you may want to put a circle or something around the number in your test booklet. Don't write on your answer sheet other than filling in the correct bubble. But on your test booklet, you can circle the ones that you skipped so you know right away to go back to that. Read carefully. Make sure you understand what the question is asking. Keep your work organized and so on. Look for easy solutions to difficult problems. Once in a while, they have some that if you get down this road, you know, these many calculations, you might have missed that really it's a pretty simple problem. And they recommend knowing the basic formulas, such as those for the areas of triangles, rectangles, and circles. It'll just save you time, and you'll need some of those basic ones. Okay. So that's kind of the overview. You can go back through this when you have time, and I'm just going to jump into one or two of the lessons to show you how they work, and I'm going to leave it up to you to go in and do more with them. But I'm going to expand now the lesson 2, the pre-algebra. Again, there'll be an introduction with a little bit. It'll have some of the things you're going to need to know. So some of these things you'll say, oh, I can remember absolute value, but I can't remember factoring. So it's all here. All that it'll show you examples of how to do them. It's almost like a little mini math course. So take a look at this. These are the pre-algebra types of skills and topics and concepts you need to know. And then what you can do, I'm going to close this one up, is now get right into these. Each bullet is a different area. So here's numbers and orders of operation, and they actually just give you the information. It's like I say, it's like a really condensed math lesson. Okay, and in some cases they actually have some sample problems, so you can try right here in terms of the order of operations. You remember you multiply first, so 2 times 8 is 16, and then you have a -5 plus 16, if I'm right, should equal 11. Let's see here. We'll check the answer, and I was right. Whew. Okay. I'm not going to try anymore. I'll be risking it then. But anyway, you can see how that works. They don't all have sample problems, but many of them do. Okay. So on the left, you can see if you need help with fractions and decimals, exponents and square roots. It's probably not a bad idea to go through all of these, even if you just kind of read through to refresh your memory. Because in some cases, you might be in a math class where you haven't had to do a square root. It could have been a year or two. Okay, so that's where all the information is. Here's absolute value, for instance, and so on. Okay, so that was on pre-algebra, and the same things occur all the way down to trigonometry. Here's coordinate geometry, how to calculate slope, and so on. Okay, and if you are not sure, even from this description, you know, how again to calculate slope, don't forget, if you go to YouTube and search for calculating slope, you'll find all kinds of great videos on how to do it. So any of these concepts you can get refreshed on by jumping online and Googling or going to YouTube for that. So that's about it for the overview on the math test. It's really up to you. And we talked earlier about the value of having a strong ACT score. For a lot of students, the math score is one that sometimes keeps their composite lower than it could be or should be. So again, if you're thinking about studying wisely, unless you know you're really strong in math, you might want to spend more time working on this preparation, these resources, and the practice tests than the English or the reading. But that's really up to you and knowing where you need the help. But there's still time. So I would say, you know, take a look at that and do 1 or 2 of the practice tests, and it should help raise your score a few points at the very least.